Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm April Knight, and you're watching our News 2 election special sponsored by the Mapp-Potter campaign. Now, today we have Governor Mapp and Lieutenant Governor Potter, and they're going to be presenting once again key aspects of their platform, address key issues that are significant to the territory, and as well as make their final pitch before the runoff elections on November 20th, which is fast approaching. Now, if you want to hear where they stand on certain issues, stay with us within the next hour. These gentlemen, of course, need no introduction, but I'm going to say a few words anyway. Sure. Governor, you were raised on St. Croix, served 3 terms as VI Senator.
Yes.
Lieutenant Governor under Governor Schneider from 95 to 99, and then you got your master's in public administration from the JFK School of Government at Harvard. And then you were also the Director of Finance and Administration at the PFA under Governor Turnbull. You were appointed in 2002.
That's correct.
Now, Lieutenant Governor Potter served 2 terms in the Senate, and he was also former executive director at WTJX.
Correct.
And then you studied finance at the University of the Virgin Islands, correct? Okay. Welcome, and thank you for coming on the show. Now, let's get straight to the results of the general election. You won St. Croix handily.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we didn't see the same results on St. Thomas.
We took a shellacking on St. Thomas.
And St. Thomas and St. John.
Yes.
Why do you think that is? And what can you tell voters on St. Thomas and St. John to change their minds in time for November 20th?
Well, I take personal responsibility for our poor showing in the district of St. Thomas, St. John. I think part of the reason for the result was that folks really want me to focus on the issues at hand, their lives, improving the community, improving the economy, jobs, and they don't take kind to some of the shenanigans that I involved myself with early in my term, and the personal outbursts. And I hear what the folks are saying. I accept full responsibility for it, and can focus going forward. I think that there's very little dispute that I bring a lot of competence and experience and goodwill to the table as governor, and I can assure the people of St. Thomas, St. John that I can focus, and I can, with my lieutenant governor and cabinet, I can get the job done in rebuilding this territory and improving the quality of their lives.
Lieutenant Governor, what do you think?
I think that we have been doing a great job. I think people get distracted by other things, and that is what I see here in the St. Thomas, St. John district. The distraction is refocusing the electorate from the tremendous job that was done before the hurricane and ushering the territory through the 2 Category 5 hurricanes and positioning the Virgin Islands now to really take off and be stronger than we have ever been, ever. And when we look at what this administration was able to get the federal government to commit to in order to rebuild this economy, it is per capita far outdistances our neighbors to the west of us in Puerto Rico and other territory. I mean, our other states and cities in the mainland. So it is not that, in my opinion, similar to what the governor said, it is not that the voters went to the polls and said that the Mapp-Potter team did not do enough or did not get the job done or did not, take us to recovery where we were able to get power back to just about everyone that could have gotten power by December. After 2 Category 5 hurricanes. That took a lot of leadership, that took a lot of focusing and getting things done. It is not that the individuals that you will find having their issues with voting for the governor and me, it's not that they don't think that we are capable and competent and have been doing a good job. But there's this but. But I don't like how the governor said something here to this person, and I don't like how the governor spoke to this person on that particular day. And to me, it gives everyone in the territory, in St. Thomas, St. John district, a chance to refocus. Let us refocus on November 20th. Let us start to think between now and November 20th on what it is you're really saying. You're saying you are ready to discard and push on the side all that has been done, all that we are positioned to do, all the recovery efforts that took place. You are ready to push that on the side because you are hearing that, okay, I do not like how the governor speaks to people sometimes. That is not a reason to change out this administration. April, I am telling you, not because it's the governor and I here, but look at what has been done. Look at what we are positioned to do. We are now poised to rebuild 4 schools from scratch and with all the amenities and everything of the modern schools. We have the funding that has been approved for that. We are ready to rebuild the hospitals. We are ready to rebuild the roads to national standards, and the funding has been approved for that. The plans, in order for us to get to the point where we are now, April, those plans had to have been approved by the federal government. And if we are removed from the equation with...
You mean your team?
Our team, with the plans that are in place, with the funding that have been approved, connected to those plans, it's going to set us back. So I am making a serious appeal to you, the voting public out there. Think twice about what it is you are doing when you let the other distractions take you away from the actual accomplishments and the position that we are now to move forward with this territory.
We're going to circle back. I'm sorry.
And let me just add, if I can, from the human side of the whole thing. The job of governor is a tough job. It really is. And yes, governors must focus, and a lot of times you have to let the chatter fall by the wayside. And the pressures of dealing with all of the particular issues, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that the outcomes, the result for the people of the community is a positive result. And notwithstanding my personal errors and shortcomings as a human being, as I have served for governor with some of the outbursts, I believe that it is clear that I work very hard. We work very hard for the people of the Virgin Islands and deliver on the dime, bring home the resources and bring home the improvements and the changes and the opportunities that are so important to the people of the Virgin Islands. And we are committed to seeing this process through to the end and seeing it through to the end with a very positive result for this territory.
We're going to circle back to that later so you can address that a little more. The issues that people have with your personality and whether or not that has a bearing on your ability to govern and lead the Virgin Islands. Let's go back to the general election. Based on those results, what issues do you believe are on the ballot come November 20th? In spite of all the distractions and people caring about so many different issues depending on what demographics they belong to, what do you think is on the ballot on the 20th? Well,
the primary issue that's on the ballot is the recovery of the territory. Whether we are going to continue and proceed to this recovery and implement it, or whether the voters are going to decide to stop, put a new administration in office, that new administration then take a new plan to the federal government and hope and work to try to get the federal government to endorse that plan and to fund it. And the reality is, in February of this year, when the Congress voted to provide the first level of support, financial support to the Virgin Islands, the federal government was managing disasters in 6 states and territories. Today, the federal government is managing disasters in 35 states and territories and in over 700 cities and counties. So when the Virgin Islands go back, and one of the primary offices that you've got to get the endorsement of any plan or any priority with the recovery is the Federal Office of Management and Budget. So when the Virgin Islands or a new administration returns to Washington and say we have a new set of priorities and we have a new strategy for the recovery, you've got to go back to OMB and start that process all over. There must be some concession or recognition that that's going to slow down, if not halt, the recovery until that federal endorsement is achieved. And the clock in terms of the number of days that you have 100% federal support for the recovery, and then there's a time in the schedule that goes 90% for federal support for the recovery, and then it falls to 75% federal support, because the whole point of putting in the timelines are to encourage jurisdictions to hasten and stay on track with the recovery plan so that they can have their communities rebuilt.
And you think that can't happen with the new administration?
It cannot. If a new administration says we will keep the Mapp-Potter plan and the Mapp-Potter strategy, then the question is, why are you changing a new administration to shepherd a plan that they, for all intents and purposes, had no input? None of the commissioners, none of the relationships, none of the discussions that are going on with the federal entities that are releasing dollars to the territory on a weekly basis, and the relationships that have been created. Let's just be clear, the national community has changed the control of the House of Representatives to a Democratic Party-controlled Congress. And you still have President Trump, who controls, his administration controls the flow of dollars on federal recovery. When you send a representative of the Virgin Islands as a Democratic Party governor, you have to ask yourself the question, how is the executive branch going to receive this individual that is a part of a party that has declared, for all intents and purposes, an all-out war on the president. And when we were going through the hurricanes last September and the whole discussions, one of the things that I really worked hard to do was to keep the Virgin Islands out of the conflict of the pro-trumpeters and the anti-trumpeters, because we would simply lose in that process. And the ability to be an independent governor that achieved or gained the admiration and the respect of the president and the vice president and the administration, and not have that party, any party affiliation, to say I'm a Republican or a Democrat, I'm here representing the issues of the American citizens in the territories, have proven very beneficial for the people of the Virgin Islands.
And to double down on that, April, to double down on that, I don't want what the governor just said to go just lightly by everyone. You think
that the Democratic governor will have a tangible effect on the relationships between our government and the federal?
There will be a negative effect to a large extent when you are saying a Democratic governor from the VI now replacing an independent governor who was able to relate with both sides equally as well and maneuver equally as well throughout the federal government. You know for a fact, and just about everyone in the territory know for a fact, that it's an all-out war on the federal level with Democrats and Republicans. It's an all-out war. President Trump is still the president, whether you may like that or not.
Or whether you like his personality or not is not the point.
He is still the president, and now you are saying, if you replace the Mapp-Potter team, and this is just the reality of it, this is not a scare tactic, it's a reality. If you replace the Mapp-Potter team with the independent governor that was able to work so well with the Republican president and the House and Senate, both sides of the aisle, by a partisan Democrat who is now going to find direct friction with the president, because the president is not happy with any one single Democratic governor throughout the nation. A Democratic governor from the Virgin Islands is not going to be suddenly any different. So we need to not let this be a scare tactic at all, because it's not. It's a reality check where you face the reality that, okay, if in fact, come November 20th, it is changed and you have a Democratic governor going up now trying to make overtures to the White House under President Trump, we are going to be in for some trouble. We are going to be in for some stagnation in the progress that we have made, and the Virgin Islands as a whole are who going to really be the ones to suffer as a result, and that is just a fact.
So far, a new administration will mean a slowdown in the hurricane recovery effort, one, and two, a tangible effect in the relationships between the Virgin Islands and the federal government.
There's no question about that. I mean, I don't get a lot of TV time in these days, but I do tune in to the national news, and I'm not making any judgment about what role the new majority in the House should play with respect to oversight of the president. But the designated chairs of the various committees have publicly announced that they're going to subpoena the president's tax returns, and they're going to launch investigations, and so they're going to have a direct clash, and of course the president isn't mincing any words. And this has nothing to do with whether you're a pro-Trumpeter or a non-pro-Trump person. It's about the interest of the people of the Virgin Islands. It is weird you want the Virgin Islands situated in that fight. Do you want to be in the middle of it? Do you want to have your governor standing there at the White House, and as far as the president and looks at your governor and saying you're just a Democrat with all the others, and having that the response to that? And there's no question. I'm not making any qualitative or any judgment about what's going on in Puerto Rico in terms of how they're managing their recovery. But the all-out war with the mayor, one of the mayors in Puerto Rico, and the president is clearly reflected in the continued struggle of Puerto Rico to access the level of resources and the cooperation of the administration in its recovery. And the question is whether we want to place the Virgin Islands in that same track.
Let me sidetrack a little bit. Let's talk about a recent development. This debate that was supposed to happen this week. The VI Consortium recently announced that the Brian Roach team backed out of the debate. Now, their team says it's a scheduling issue and that November 13th wouldn't work for them, and they weren't able to find a workaround on that. You are saying that it's a refusal to debate.
Well, this consortium has certainly printed the facts of this debate. We received an invitation to participate on the debate. We didn't ask for any date on the debate. I'm always prepared to discuss the issues affecting the people of the Virgin Islands, and I think the entire territory knows that. The WTJX and the consortium put this whole process together. They wrote us about a week ago following the November 6th election and said the 13th or Tuesday evening it would happen. They gave us the 5 topics, and they gave us the generalized rules of the debate. The only inquiry that Lieutenant Governor Potter and I had on the debate was that we wanted to ensure it was a true debate, and not using the term debate, but it was going to be a forum.
Yeah.
We had no issues with whatever date or time that it would be. And the Brian Roach team also submitted a response that they agree and will attend the debate. So it was scheduled.
To a date?
It was scheduled. Channel 12 and the consortium set the date of the 13th, and both camps agreed to that date, and we all agreed to the terms and the conditions and the 5 topics, and we were set to go. It's last Friday afternoon late that WTJX and the consortium received, I believe, an email from the Brian Roach team saying that they had nothing to gain by participating in the debate, and so were withdrawing from the debate. So there was never any scheduling issue. And I believe the consortium quotes one of their managers as saying that a debate with the governor was too much of a risk for them, and so they did not need to participate. This discussion about conflicting of the schedule is just a complete farce, and it continues. That's what they do. They just make it up.
Well, Governor, let me ask you, and this is a question too that's been brought up by residents when they heard about the debate issue. The question is, what use is a debate at this point when we've had so many gubernatorial forums and debates leading up to the November 6th election?
Before you answer, Governor, let me just say, April, it's a big difference. Okay, you had 7 people on stage at one time, 7 teams on stage at one time, trying to take 2 minutes to run through questions for the sake of getting things done in an hour and a half. That's totally different from if you're having 2 individuals one-on-one having a discussion and specific issues with time not necessarily being a factor, but just your responses and the quality of your responses to the questions being the major concern. So you cannot, under any condition, compare the fact that you may have appeared in 2 or 3 forums, because there were never any debates during the process. You cannot compare you appearing on 3 or 4 forums with 6 other individuals and try to equate that to being one-on-one with the last 2 individuals standing before the public make that final decision. They are there like day and night. It's totally different.
Do you think it's going to make a difference, like a few days before?
I know that a contrast of the 2 candidates would give the voters the opportunity to really see the capacity of the candidates, right? The capacity, the skill, the knowledge, the competence, and the way the format of that debate was set. There were 5 topics like GRS, the economy, education, healthcare, etc. And then there were going to be 20-minute blocks of times, and each of the candidates would speak initially as to their proposals in dealing with that particular area, and then be able to engage in a discussion and a conversation about that process. And so the voter would be able to see the 2 candidates remaining for governor have a good interchange and a discussion on these important topics, and be able to see for themselves where they felt the competency is, because the likability is important, no question about that. But at the end of the day, do you want a governor that you really like that's totally incompetent to do the job, or do you want someone that may maybe annoy you or have some annoying tendencies, but you know and you have the confidence that they are competent, they have the knowledge, they have the skill, they go out and can represent the interest of the people of the Virgin Islands and return home with some success?
Let's take a look at your first 4 years. What are the accomplishments that you are most proud of? And this is considering, of course, and this is something that we bring up at News 2 every time we talk about the election, is the fact that you're being criticized for hurricane recovery. Some people think it was too slow or too disorganized, and then we pose the question, could anyone have done any better with 2 Cat 5 hurricanes back to back? Given those challenges, and given the fact that we can't borrow capital, access capital, what are the accomplishments that you are most proud of in your first 4 years?
We kept the family intact. We kept food on the plate. We kept the lights on in the community. We kept our payroll in our private and public sectors growing. We kept our family intact during the difficult recovery from the 2012 recession. The government lacked tremendous cash, like a working family with bills to pay, and not quite sure if we were going to make it from payday to payday. And what we were able to do was make it from payday to payday, and keeping food on the table. In 2016, we were able to pay over 3,000 government workers their 2010 contracts that were unfunded. The community, particularly those that were uninsured and underinsured, we were able to change the income guidelines in the Medicaid program
expansion.
that allowed not just 23,000 people that had access to paid healthcare services, but to grow those rolls to 41,000 Virgin Islanders. We were able to increase the jobs in the public sector, hire 2,343 government workers from 2015 to 2018. We were able to grow employment in the private sector and change the minimum wage in the private sector from $7.15 to $10.50 an hour. We were successful in paying the 2010, the 2011, the 2012, the 2013, the 2014, the 2015, and now paying the 2016 income tax refunds. And so
the 2016 isn't out yet, or
the
is
2016s are going out. Every other Wednesday we put income tax refunds in the mail, and we do that in tandem with the cash. And I know that when you owe people, people say, I don't need an excuse, I want my money. And I've waited so long to get my money, and I want my money. And
I was going to ask you about 2016 because one of our viewers did ask, where's my 2016 check?
They're coming out every other Wednesday. We release tax refunds in the mail. Some Wednesdays we release more than others. And because we have growing revenues, new revenues coming into the Treasury, we're now able to release more chunks of income tax so that we can catch up and become totally current. But we don't want it to go unstated that since we came in office in 2015, we've paid about $195 million in income tax refunds, and we will continue to do that.
And April, you know, some people focus is simply income taxes, unfortunately or fortunately. Some people do not care to understand or to listen or to even digest the fact that we are on the verge of building 4 new schools from scratch. Some people don't care to know that we are going to be repairing, you know, thousands of miles of road to the standards, and that we have, gotten the funds to do so. Some people don't care to know that the hospitals on all 3 islands are going to be rebuilt from scratch. Some people don't care to know that 50% of the water and power authority lines are going to be buried so that in the future recovery would be a lot shorter than it is now. But they care about their tax returns. Now,
It's something that directly affects them
directly,
right now.
directly. And we are not arguing with them on that, but we are also saying, do not lose sight of the fact that we entered office in 2015, and many of these individuals did not get the tax returns from 2010. That is something that the public has to digest, take a deep breath on, and say, okay, let me think about this a second.
It's a pre-existing condition.
Okay, we met it, and we couldn't say, well, we are not going to pay 2010, 2011, 2012, 13, and 14 because that was not our responsibility, so we'll pick up from 2015. No, we paid 2010, like the governor said, all the way down, so people have gotten that. And we are now moving forward
that
to
we sent 2 supplemental appropriations to add chunks, $10 million out of the closing payment with the refinery. I sent a recent, because of the additional new revenues, an additional appropriation for another $10 million, which helps us to bring down the back income tax refunds so that we can get current in the current fiscal year budget is where you will see a big chunk of money to pay income tax refunds on a regular basis, but we still have to get the way the law works, the federal law works, we have to pay those persons based on when they file their income tax return, so we can't leave a year out. And so we've asked the legislature to put another $20-odd million of new revenues that we received, authorized us to pay the back income tax refund so we can get to the current refunds.
Now, very quickly, we're going to take a little break in a minute, but priorities. First priorities if you get re-elected into office. Let's just give our viewers like a bam, bam, bam. What are you going to do once you get back in?
Well, what we're doing now is we're solidifying the final approvals for the temporary hardened structures for the hospitals, because what we want to do is make sure that any remaining of our Virgin Islanders that are on the mainland, particularly for dialysis services, can come home, and we want to get the hospitals situated because they're still in a very broken way, and there are some temporary hardened facilities. They could withstand 75 mile an hour winds, and the U.S. government will pay for that. And so I met with, on the St. Thomas side, with Dr. Wheatley and the medical staff for them to, they've already done their A&E services to really put the program on a board so that FEMA can launch the bids for that. The one for the St. Croix Hospital is out now, being bidded on, and get that moving. We have to get the temporary hardened facilities for our hospitals in place.
All right. We're going to have more from Governor Mapp and Lieutenant Governor Potter. When we come back, you're watching a News 2 election special sponsored by the Mapp-Potter campaign. We'll be right back.
In the U.S. Virgin Islands,
Candidate Albert Bryan has refused to debate Governor Ken Mapp. Albert Bryan seems to have forgotten that there were 7 candidates in the general election.
These days, everybody running. Everybody's running. You look around, everybody running.
And many Virgin Islanders still have a decision to make. The public has an absolute right to see those who aspire to our highest office go head to head. It's crucial that our leaders be able to stand on their own accord and explain and defend their positions. If Albert Bryan is incapable of debating Ken Mapp, how can we ever expect Bryan to testify before Congress on our behalf? A debate is the one forum where slick advertising campaigns and corrupt party politics are not a factor. It is the one opportunity for the public to see what their candidates are really made of, rather than to hear them simply read a script. We call upon all Virgin Islanders to challenge Albert Bryan to participate in a debate before the November 20th elections. No one unwilling to stand before you deserves to serve you, Mr. Bryan.
Welcome back. You're watching our News 2 election special sponsored by the Mapp-Potter campaign. I'm April Knight, and we're here with Governor Mapp and Lieutenant Governor Potter. Now, we did talk about quite a few issues earlier in the show. This time, we're going to get to what seems to be a very big issue for a lot of people, and that is GRS. Now, Governor, you said that the legislature failed to act on your proposal to address reforms at GRS. Can you clarify what those issues are?
Well, I don't know if I quite want to say fail to act, because there's still time to act. But the government employees retirement system is facing insolvency in 2024. And so literally what we must do is add solvency to the system. And we sent a package to the legislature that the GERS actuaries say provide an additional 4 to 5 years of solvency. And that's pretty much raising the contribution on salaries above 65,000. Those persons who make above 65,000 continue to contribute to the system. The government increasing its contribution by 3% each year for the next 3 years. 50% of the revenues that the government will receive from refining operations, which is over $300 million, go to the GRS on a quarterly basis. We want to purchase the Havenside Mall and do a deal with one of our cruise partners and reinvigorate the mall, and not only give the cash for the value of the mall, but give the GERS 50% of the revenues from the mall in perpetuity, and then the investment in the new 110-room hotel, a $10 million equity contribution. We get an interest payment from that. We get a percentage of the net receipts of that, give all of those revenues to the Government Employees Retirement System, and that will move solvency up to 2029.
Now, my understanding is that this was all sent to the legislature in one package, and then they took out certain parts of that package and turned it into their own bills. So
that doesn't, for me, it doesn't matter whose name's on the bill. It's just to get the pieces implemented in the statute so that we can implement it and then drive additional revenues. The legislature did put an additional $20 million or $19 million in the miscellaneous section of the budget, again because of new revenues, to the Government Employees Retirement System. But we should understand that it takes $100 million to do 1 year of solvency. And so while $20 million is helpful, you would need 5 20s to get, you need 5 fiscal years to get 1 year. Whereas if we do the comprehensive authorizations and the reforms that we submitted, we will get 4 to 5 years by that action. And I am positive that the legislature ultimately would act favorably on the proposals.
do you think that can happen before the 33rd legislature gets sworn in?
I am hopeful, and we're going to be pushing for that.
Okay. Let's talk about road improvement. Now, it's no secret that our roads have been bad even before the hurricanes struck. And then the hurricanes came, it just made matters worse. But we are seeing a lot of construction all over the place.
That's correct.
Veterans Drive by the Contant area is getting, I think it's getting paved over.
The Howard Highway, that's an ongoing, and they're completing that project, which will take it to the intersection of Frenchtown.
Right, and then we have the waterfront improvement project, and then we also recently you did the bridge to nowhere. That's now the bridge to somewhere.
That's correct.
So we are definitely seeing.
And we have paving projects that are going to be taking place this year in Anna's Retreat. We're going to have paving projects taking place in Tutu. We're going to have Petersburg Road. There are a number of the Scott Free Road is while we're doing the bridge. There's going to be a complete rebuild of that road as well.
Yeah.
And then the one of the big ones where the road is going to be completely removed and redone will be Duna Bypass, Skyline Drive, Harmony, and Tabor. Which will also include underground the utilities for the Water and Power Authority, a complete change out of water and sewer lines, and composite tubing for folks like VIRE and the ISPs, sidewalks, drainage, striping, and the whole lot. We have been approved to date about $430 million that we will be putting into our road system in St. Croix. We're doing Anna's Hope, Work and Rest Estate, WIM. We know we are already doing the complete redo of the highway and going out to Hams Bluff, Mahogany Road. All of those roads are either being worked on currently or going to be worked on. And so the folks will continue to see massive improvements of the road system.
And April, let me just say, because again,
and let me just say this, St. John Center Line Road.
Don't forget St. John.
And Water Island will have their 8.4 miles of roads completely redone as a project, yes.
And April, you know, the public, and we may probably need to do a better job of explaining to the public.
Communicating to them, yeah.
Because we got over $400 million for roads, it doesn't mean that the next day you'll go out and see a road project happening. It cannot happen that way. Projects have to be designed and engineered, and the bids have to go out for these projects, competitive bids. So it's a process that takes time. So now that you see these projects coming online is because all of those things happen.
Is that your response to critics who say, why are all these things happening now close to election?
Well, we had 2 Category 5 hurricanes in 2017, and you take all of the intersections in the territory, they're all going to be completely modernized, and it is the Department of Transportation, the U.S. Department of Transportation, that's doing that project, not even the local government. They're providing the funding. They're doing it through Eastern Federal Lands, a subsidiary of DOT, and not only just putting lights, but they're putting a complete redo of the intersections. I just want to say this because someone raised a concern to me that they were concerned that it matters not that the territory can access $8.5 billion for its recovery. There's little expectation that we'll be able to spend that money because the government just has broken systems. And what I want to explain to the community is we will be able to, because very early on after the storms, we were able to go out and bid and receive consulting services from a team like Wood O'Brien's that contracted with the state of Louisiana for the reconstruction and work after Katrina, and contracted with New York City for the reconstruction of New York after Hurricane Sandy. We brought those folks on board December of last year, and they've got a team of about 70 people on the ground. We brought Ernst & Young in, that is working with us on a daily basis, tracking all of the federal dollars, ensuring that we're following the procurement process and the bidding process, and then making sure we have all the documentation, that we're providing all of the information to FEMA as they release dollars. Why our recovery is so robust and the resources are so available, because we have put in place teams of folks that know this work well to ensure that the plan that the U.S. government have endorsed for the Virgin Islands, that we're following that plan and following the federal guidelines and the local procurement statutes to implement the recovery.
Governor, let's talk about Hovensa. When it closed, some 3,000 workers were laid off. Guide us through what you were thinking as you tried to cobble together this deal for the refinery.
Well, certainly when I came in 2015, there were less than 60 people working in the shuttered refinery, and we met with Hess and PDVSA, and I think everyone knows that they pretty much threw the gauntlet down that I needed to provide some concessions to them, or the $40 million that they owed the government. We would not see that. I turned my back on that, and to me that just was not wise on their part, and I thought it was offensive to the people of the territory to take that attitude after we had been so supportive of them for over 32 years. And notwithstanding, we resolved those issues and was able to find a buyer, and we settled our issues with Hess. The people received over $230 million and some 525 acres of land, including vocational schools and the houses and the like. ArcLight, the new partner, wanted to do a storage terminal facility, and the plan was to sort of deconstruct or take down the refinery and concentrate on storing fuels. We didn't want that to happen. We thought there was still an opportunity that we would be able to pursue refining, and so we worked. When President Trump came in, he set up a system for the state and territorial governors to be able to take large economic private sector investment projects and submit to the White House that would have needed the federal regulatory process. And we submitted a bunch of the stuff having to do with the refineries, and were able to work with the Trump administration to get through that process that allowed ArcLight now to be able to invest originally $1.2 billion in the reconstruction of the refinery. But I am proud to tell the people of the Virgin Islands on Wednesday we will be closing everything, and the investment in the refinery will be $1.6 billion. And we will be announcing on Wednesday who the tolling arrangement is, who's the oil major that ArcLight now will be, that have signed with in terms of using the products of the refinery. So there are going to be about 1,400 construction jobs. If you live in St. Thomas, St. John, we're going to be doing job fairs in this district. And if you want to work in the refinery during the reconstruction and you're hired, your room, board, and meals will be provided free of charge. The refinery, once complete, will have about 700 permanent jobs. On the storage terminal side of the refinery, We already have 850 permanent jobs there. And so that whole operation out there will employ over 1,600 full-time workers after the reconstruction and support a number of businesses on the island, which will drive more jobs. So we're happy to have gotten that through.
And when you say you're announcing this on Wednesday, you mean November 14th, Wednesday?
Yes, the not so much I'm announcing, but ArcLight and their tolling partner will be announcing and putting out the press release on who they are. We will be closing all of the transactions between the government of the VI, ArcLight, and the tolling partner, which then there will be monies transferred to the government pursuant to the closing payment. We've agreed not to take what my opponents like to call the payday loan of $40 million, and so we're just concentrating on those monies that we're receiving for the sale of the land. And I just want to say for the record, an appraisal of the homes and the 220 acres that we're selling was done. They were appraised at $28 million, and we're getting $30 million for them.
Let's talk about the raises. And you're right, Lieutenant Governor. People who criticize the raises bring up, one, the timing of the raises, and two, the fact that we are giving $10,000 worth of increase in pay to people who just are becoming teachers or police officers, while possibly not giving the same consideration to those who are already seasoned or tenured.
Well, we've resolved that, and again, I don't want folks to don't just look at the raises that were authorized in 2018. Let's be honest here. We met unfunded contracts that were signed in 2010, and in 2016, the Mapp-Potter administration funded to 3,000 government workers their salaries under those collective bargaining agreements. It wasn't an election year, but we got it done. We have folks that are, let's say, in the SIU union that haven't seen increases, and correction officers that hadn't seen increases in over 15 years. When we raised the minimum pay for the private sector and then raised the minimum pay for the public sector, it certainly had to affect employees across the board, and they deserve and earn those pay increases. We had to change the entrance wages for teachers, police officers, correction officers, firefighters, social workers, EMTs, because we had such an amount of vacancies for those critical services, and candidates simply were not applying for the jobs. Last school year, 152 teacher vacancies. I'm shaking the hands of graduates at the University of the Virgin Islands that are getting master's degrees and teacher certifications, and I'm saying the government is open, we're ready to hire you today. And they're saying to me, I can't work for $34,000. I'm going to Atlanta, I'm going to Maryland. So we raised the entrance pay, but we have concluded a successful negotiations with the American Federation of Teachers to provide increases now for the experienced teachers. We weren't giving out pay increases just to the entry level and forgetting the seasoned employees. We have resolved our issues with the Police Benevolent Association. While we changed the entrance pay for police officers, we've now negotiated an agreement with the PBA for senior officers. The education.
What are we looking at for the senior officers and teachers?
They range over the 3-year process. They range as high, I believe, on the education side, they range as high as $8,000 or $9,000. But there are step increases that they wanted, and then they got a new pay scale. So those persons, when we changed the entrance level, they moved everybody up, because we didn't pay the folks that coming in are going to get their new salary, and the folks that were there on the low salary stay there. Everyone moves, and when you raise salaries at the bottom, it's like high tide. It pushes everyone else's in that bargaining unit and that classification through either the executive order or negotiated wages. We were able to bring everybody up to a modicum of salaries that folks are now looking to return home or stay home because they now can access living wages.
Governor, let's talk about your free tuition bill. I believe it's called the Workforce Development Program.
The Workforce Development Scholarship Program.
Scholarship Program. Now, there's been a bit of controversy as to the ownership of the bill. When it got to the legislature, I believe it was preempted by a previous bill.
The governor's bills to the legislature cannot be preempted. Preemption is a rule of the legislature. The governor submits bills pursuant to the Revised Organic Act, which is our de facto constitution. Dr. David Hall, the president of the University of the Virgin Islands, and Board of Trustee member Mrs. Oran Roebuck Bowery asked for a meeting and approached me that Mrs. Bowery had been working to really drive a free tuition program at the university for Virgin Islands high school graduates. They were successful in receiving annual grants from the Anderson Corporation and also receiving an annual grant from the U.S. Department of Education, but did not have enough revenues to be able to launch the program, or enough monies to launch the program. So we worked with them and adopted and developed a program for the Workforce Development Scholarship Program and took $3 million of revenues and sent that to the legislature. There was no
preemption.
There was no preemption, and point of fact, we now all learned when the media asked to see the Senator Roach's proposal that there was only a bill request. The free tuition issue that we want to start in fall of this year was also contained in some of our previous proposed constitutions for the Virgin Islands. The point is, we want the legislature to act on it. The University of the Virgin Islands want to prepare for it so that in September of 2019, any graduate from any high school in the Virgin Islands would qualify for this scholarship development program, workforce development program.
Whatever age, whenever they graduated.
As long as it's their first degree, and it didn't matter when they graduated, but this will change the lives of so many people and provide us with a good workforce in the future. We also have received an approval of $15 million from the U.S. government for vocational training because we want to prepare our young people to take a part in the recovery and to work in this rebuilding of the territory. And so the Workforce Development Board, myself, Dr. Hall, and Commissioner McCollum has already begun a meeting to launch the first 7 vocations that we can put our young people in, that these funds can be used for the training to get young people skills to be able to participate in the growth and expansion of the economy.
And just walking through the neighborhoods as we canvass, for example, we passed through Contant Nose a few nights ago. And the young people, there were some young people there that just were eagerly, I was pleasantly surprised, but they were eagerly looking forward to this free tuition measure becoming law officially so that they can go to UVI. So they asked me about it, tell them it's going to happen, it's real, it's not anything that's phantom. So they were relieved to know that it is something real and they are looking forward to it. They've been out of school like 2 years and trying to get a higher education, but actually doesn't have the funds to do so. So I was feeling really good that we are able to provide for them as we move on.
We're going to wrap up in a little bit. I wanted to circle back to what we were talking about earlier before I give you, gentlemen, a chance to appeal to our voters and invite them to vote, of course, on November 20th. During the course of our conversation, we have talked about how sometimes people say that they are not voting for Governor Mapp because they don't like him. Personality is certainly an issue for a lot of people. You certainly have feisty responses to some questions, whether it's in press conferences or online conversations, and you have not shied away from telling people what you think of them.
Well, the reality is that I do have a very strong personality, and it does attract very strong jabs at me. The point is that the strong personality that I have, and as I said, while I agree and I have learned all my life that when you listen to others, you can learn. And I listen to the people of the Virgin Islands, and I take away a lesson from that. And the lesson is focus on the task at hand, on the job at hand. And let me just say this, that the strong personality that I possessed, that I have, while it may rub some folks wrong, it is that personality that was able to sit in the well at the U.S. Congress. And when folks from other jurisdictions asked or didn't think that the Virgin Islands, that this territory, should receive the kind of support it's receiving for its recovery, I was able to relate to that objection and to speak about the sacrifices of the people of the Virgin Islands and the conflicts of America. I was able to go out and represent the Virgin Islands with confidence and to speak to a president and a vice president and Republicans and Democrats and convey the story of the U.S. Virgin Islands and what American citizens here were experiencing as a result of the disaster. So yes, I need to taper and rein in some of that personality, but that personality is what has helped to provide for the people of the Virgin Islands. And while it has some negative sides, and I am human, but my willingness to listen and I think to learn and to be able to learn from it as I mature and get older, because I'm still an aging young man, I think will bode the territory well.
So your personality, the issues that people have with you have no bearing on your ability to govern or lead the territory?
Not at all, not at all. And if I was dogmatic or if I was stuck in cement and just decided that that's all I could do and that's the way I am, that wouldn't be good either. But the ability to take the feedback and as we go through the campaign and to listen to folks saying to me, you know the work. There's no question you know the work, you understand the issues. But you've got to leave some of the foolishness alone. You got to not respond to some people when they're pushing buttons, and you're the governor, and we don't want to see that. And I hear that loud and clear.
Gentlemen, I'm going to give you a chance to talk to our voters and invite them to come out on November 20th.
Well, early voting begins on November 18th. I believe this Saturday.
I think it's the
Saturday,
17th,
Sunday,
17th and 18th.
The 17th and 18th, and we want you to go out. There's just two choices, and Osbud and I really bring to the table experience, temperament, maturity, knowledge of the job, strong relationships with our federal partners, a recovery plan that has been endorsed by the national government and being funded by the national government. And there's no need to change and go back in the back of the line and get behind 34 other states and territories trying to convince the Office of Management and Budget on the U.S. level that we need to change our strategy and change our priorities. We are saying to you, let us continue with the recovery of the Virgin Islands and the rebuilding of the Virgin Islands, and let us continue with the expansion of our economy. St. Thomas is going to see a new birth. It's going to see dredging of its harbors. It's going to see the Quantum and the Oasis class vessels coming in to the harbor. Schooner Bay in St. Croix will see a complete new depth for larger ships to come in to Christiansted, while it will be hosting the smaller cruise ships into Gallus Bay. And so we don't need to start this process from the beginning with a new administration. Let us continue with our second 4 years and get the job done for you.
Lieutenant Governor?
Well, I think it's clear. I think if you, as the voting public, just pause and just take a look at what is before you. Pause and understand where we have been. Pause and understand where we are now and where we are heading. And you have not gotten there, we have not taken you there with a whole lot of smoke and mirrors. We have gotten you there by real, solid, hardcore work, real hardcore planning, real hardcore networking with the federal government, and we are poised to bring this territory to a position of strength where it has never been before. And I'm saying that put whatever distractions you have aside and look truly at what is in front of you. this administration, the team of Mapp-Potter, we know what we are doing. We are in the middle of it. We are ready to continue and finish it. This is not the time to start over and like you're rolling a dice and playing Russian roulette with your future. You cannot gamble with your future. And I'm going to say, just think twice, 3 times before you go and push a button to replace us, because we are there and we are solid and we are steady at the controls and we know what we are doing. You do not know what you're going to get. And that might sound cliche, but you do not know what you're going to get. You know what you have. And I am saying we are ready to continue what we're doing and take you to a solid future for this territory.
Wonderful. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for
Thank
joining
you.
us. And I want to thank our viewers for watching the show. You're watching the News 2 Election Special, sponsored by the Mapp-Potter campaign. Now, before we go, I want you to go to our Facebook page. Your polling places are there if you're voting on November 20th. Follow us on Facebook at News2VI, on Instagram at TV2USVI, or send us an email at newsdirector@tv2.vi. We want to thank you again for joining us. This was Governor Mapp and Lieutenant Governor Potter, and we hope that you were more informed as you head to the polls in the next few days.